Welcome back. Our little dose of spring snow has melted, and if you have a green thumb, you've probably been hard at work getting ready for the gardening season.
But how do you make sure that that hard work doesn't go to waste and your plants actually thrive this summer? Garden Guy Dale Kay joins us with some advice and looking ahead to the weekend. It's going to be tempting to start planting and stuff. I know we shouldn't yet, but we can kind of get things in order.
After this little bit of rain, and then the warmer temperatures coming up over the weekend, it's going to start to look a lot like spring. Everything's going to green up, things are going to start popping, and don't be surprised if next week we're doing some more planting, talking about lawns, because I think, the second 2 weeks of April look a lot different oftentimes than the first 2 weeks of April. So perfect timing to get your green thumb kind of in shape. So here are some basic tips, and some of them might be really familiar, but just a good reminder on how you can have your yard and all your plants flourish over the growing season. And we'll start with watering essentially, and it's kind of some basic common sense, but oftentimes with watering, just a good balance is really important, and getting to know your plants. What I like to recommend just basically is slow, deep waterings. That is usually best, rather than just splashing water around. Oftentimes with a little irrigation kit like that, you kind of end up with that slow, deep waterings that makes the soil nice and moist without causing too much wet or too soggy where root rot becomes a problem. And also a handy tool that I think is kind of a little bit underrated, just your common old watering can. You can get some water, kind of quick. It's easy to fill up from a rain barrel if you've got one of those connected, but it kind of gets water quick where you need it, so keep one of those on hand as well. Really what goes into tandem with correct watering, and again, it's finding that balance of knowing your plants. It's not always the easiest thing. Every plant's a little bit different, different times of the day, and different seasons too will determine watering. Oftentimes we're watering a little bit more in the summer, of course, than we are in the spring and in the fall. So get to know your garden a little bit. That really helps. Most importantly then, it comes to soil. First one being composting. And Kelly in front of you is like a little home composting kit that you can put all your veggie scraps into, and then into your compost bin. But essentially, once you have compost, to mix that in and incorporate it, use it liberally, that is really good. I have my compost from home right there. It's kind of that darker one. That's really a great amendment. And really kind of anything solid and organic when you're amending soil or adding amending the soil, I guess, whether it's compost or manure or compost, is really beneficial. The better the soil, the better your plants will grow, the greener your thumb will be. We're looking at some potting soil there. You do get what you pay for. I always go to a local garden shop. I get their potting soil rather than national brands. It ends up being a lot better, I think, in the long run, drains better, and that's really key as far as container gardening is drainage of potting soil. So soil is really important. And then the final thing on top of soil, anytime you can add some garden mulch to your beds, that helps retain moisture too. And actually a lot of beneficial
things. Something you do every year, would you say?
That was my next question. How often do you have to replace the mulch?
So some people will do it every year, and that's kind of like fresh sheets, right? Or like a little pop of color every 2 years, because what happens is it does compost down. So every couple of years you can go out and reapply. A couple of inches is really good. So that kind of covers the soil. And then next, of course, is fertility. And of course, you don't underestimate the power of fertilizer, particularly in the growing season for all our plants. So some things to look for. This first one, the first type of fertilizer, I guess, is the one that mixes with water, turns the water blue, like that Miracle Grow kind of stuff. That's a liquid fertilizer. That's good for all your flowers. It kind of pushes things into bloom. I like to splash a little bit on the foliage as well. I always have some of that on hand. Slow release fertilizer, that's the fertilizer that's actually coated. It has a coating on it, and it will release with time and soil temperature. And that will feed for about 4 months. That's really good for all your perennials. I pop a little bit in my container gardens. That way I don't have to fuss around too much with container gardening. But a slow release fertilizer is really good. And then for veggie gardens, I like anything that's kind of poultry manure or feather meal. You'll find it many different types of brands. But if you look on the back, and if it's derived from feather meal or some sort of poultry byproduct, I don't know what it is, because there's cow manure, there's horse manure, there's all this stuff, right? But this stuff really works, and either one actually works really, really well for fertilizing, particularly your veggies. Oh,
Okay.
It's almost like remarkable how
right?
feather
Okay.
meal or poultry fertilizer is good. If you're doing any transplanting, adding some mycorrhizae to your plantings, this activates the beneficial microbes that are in your soil. It's kind of like a good back scratch. You know how you get all you feel really good after that? That's kind of what happens to your roots. It kind of stimulates growth, essentially. So that's really good. If you're following all those great watering practices, got good soil, got good drainage, more than likely that you're not going to have pest problems. But if you do, look for something that's OMRI listed. That will be a lot better for your garden, especially your veggies and all your shrubs and your fruit trees. And then finally, pruning techniques are really important for good growth. You get to know your plants. There's all sorts of different types of pruning techniques and when to prune. It's an in-depth subject. Maybe we'll go into it a little bit further along as we go in the spring. But just simply, like on a fruit tree, there's inward-facing buds and outward-facing buds. You always want to prune to an outward-facing bud. That way the tree doesn't grow into itself. So that's just one example of correct pruning, and then, of course, at the right time as well.
Above or below?
Just above. So if I wanted to prune this back about a third, I would come back to this little bud here. This is an inward facing, that's an outward facing. So you want your trees to branch out. So that's just one little example of proper pruning. And then finally, when you're purchasing plants, make sure you read the label. There's always a lot of good information on the back. Do your research. Watch the Garden Guy here on Fox 9 Tuesdays and Thursdays. Shameless plug. You can catch me on the gram as well.
Should you be pruning fruit trees now, or is it too early?
You can before they leaf out, before they go into before they bud out is key. So, but there's a whole lot. There's a whole group. But getting to know your site and your plants, and then reading labels, doing your research online, wherever you get that good information from, goes a long way to helping your green thumb.
Yeah, the pruning seems to be always confusing. Like, you know, when, what time of the year,
right?
What plants, what shrubs?
Really quick. Okay, if it's spring blooming, you prune them after flowering. Forsythia lilacs, you prune them right after flowering. Anything that's kind of summer blooming, you can prune early right now. Spirea, Weigela, all those sort of things. So sometimes the bloom times affect pruning as well.
Okay, good stuff, Dale. Just getting started. We appreciate it.